This video is intended to assist you as you collect your samples for monitoring hormones using the Dutch test when the hormones are administered sublingually. What we mean by sublingual is really any situation where the hormone is absorbed in the mouth. So we're not talking about oral pills and capsules that are swallowed. We're talking about under the tongue, in the cheek, buccal area, hormones absorbed in the mouth. And this is a particularly difficult situation for lab testing. There's a longer video that explains the difficulties in sublingual hormone testing with serum, with especially saliva, but then also with urine testing. And with urine testing, the problem really centers around something called first pass metabolism. The issue is when you take a hormone and you swallow it, then you have hormones that end up in your urine that have gone from your mouth into your gut, then been processed and ended up in your urine, having never been in circulation as a free active hormone. So it's a bit of an overestimation of what's going on, and in some cases it can be pretty extreme in that sense. So when you take it sublingually, urine testing is the perfect way to test if the hormone isn't swallowed, but it's very, very difficult not to swallow the hormone, and if you do swallow it, results will not be clear. So let me just give you this in an example. So here's a patient taking sublingual testosterone. The reference range is around 5.5 to 17.8, and the patient is almost 10 times higher than the reference range. Down here we can see testosterone metabolites are not nearly elevated to the same degree. So again, swallowed hormones increase urine results with hormone that has never been in circulation, never been in systemic circulation as free hormone. So essentially a clinical false positive, if you will. So this is a situation where we need to be a little bit careful in what we're doing. So what's the solution? You really have two options. One is to not swallow it, and that sounds simple enough, but it's easier said than done. So really to accomplish this, you can't just be careful. You have to collect your saliva during the administration of the hormone and discard that, of course, and then rinse your mouth when you're finished. This is not real practical with lozenges that take, an hour to absorb, although you can do that. But with things that are a little bit more quickly absorbed, you can actually do this. For progesterone, it's probably best to do that for 2 days because oral progesterone, meaning the fraction that you swallow, is really going to have an impact on your results for a couple of days. And again, being careful to not swallow it is not enough. You've got to collect that saliva and make sure that you're not swallowing any of the hormone while it's being administered. If you do that, you can get very reasonable results, but it is admittedly a little bit cumbersome and difficult to actually accomplish that. So the other option is much easier to do, but it gives you maybe slightly more compromised lab testing results, and in some cases more than slightly. So basically you end up getting an underestimation for your estrogens. So what would happen is you'd take your sublingual hormone and you'd get this big wave of hormone that would go through your body, and then the results are going to stay fairly elevated for a while. So if you skip it the day of the test, and you test, you'll get numbers that will be somewhat reasonable. You can definitely look at metabolism patterns, which is important, and urine testing is really the only way to do that. But the absolute values that you're going to get using this second collection method is slightly compromised, and more so for testosterone and progesterone, because you just don't, with testosterone, it's cleared out so quickly that by the time that your option is either on day one, you're going to get, as the results we just showed, a bunch of first pass metabolites that really don't count, if you will. And on the second day, all of the hormone is for the most part gone. So that number is closer to a baseline. So you really haven't gotten any meaningful number. So for testosterone, progesterone, really your best option is to follow the top option of not swallowing it and being careful about that, but it is admittedly very difficult to do that. You may want to discuss this with your doctor, but most importantly, make sure you communicate what you're doing the day of the test. So if you need to write some notes on the requisitions so that the lab understands, that's great, but also for your provider to let them know, hey, this is what I did the day of the test, so that the results can be put in the proper context, because that's really important. Because even if there's a slight compromise, as with number 2 here, there is still a lot of meaningful data that can be pulled from the test, but you have to make sure that it's in the right context. You would never want to skip the dose the day of the test, have your doctor be oblivious to this fact, and then interpret that as if there's a deficiency in hormone, when in fact there's a predictable low response for something like testosterone, because in fact you didn't take it the day of the test. So it's an imperfect model for sublingual hormones. It's probably the most difficult situation to test well, and that includes all tests. It's especially difficult for saliva, still somewhat problematic for serum. And again, you can watch our other video on sublingual hormones if you'd like to get some more details on this. So you still get a lot of meaningful data from the urine test, from the Dutch test, but you do have to be a little bit careful with how you do it and how the provider is then interpreting that. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us at the laboratory or ask your provider, and we'd be more than happy to help you find the optimal way to test for the situation that you have.